I'm going to be talking about AI SEO. Obviously, we have been bombarded this past few years since ChatGPT launched, just globally. It's kind of a strange new world at the moment. In the SEO world in particular, as in a lot of other worlds, we are being asked all kinds of strange questions by suddenly the senior leadership teams want to know why we're not in ChatGPT and why we're not appearing for this prompt and that prompt and so on and so forth. So I'm going to talk about some of the myths that are starting to appear because, as with anything new, you end up with lots of folklore starting to emerge. So, as I say, some of it's going to get a bit geeky. Bear with me. Hopefully, most of it will make sense. So, as I say, if anybody's been in SEO for any period of time, you will know that we get these perpetual cycles of like cyclic debates around, 301 redirect or 302 redirect or subfolder versus subdirectory or all these strange things. And, we get all these strange emails, instantly ranked number one, backlinks, content doesn't matter, so on and so forth. We've got a misinformation superhighway, which has suddenly just gone into overdrive with the emergence of AI. Now, you may not know any of these terminologies, as I say, if you're not into the geeky stuff, but I'm going to hopefully clear some of that up for you. Some of you will have heard some of them, so as I say, hopefully it makes sense. We have been a bit bombarded with some new terms, like one of them is LLMS.TXT. Another one you may have heard of, information gain, that's been doing the rounds for a couple of years now. Chunking is a big one that seems to be having quite a big impact in the SEO world. And obviously, we've got these whole people are being laid off sometimes because nobody needs SEO anymore. AI can do it all. Nobody needs a copywriter anymore. AI can do it all. All these things. So as I say, I'm going to go over some of these. So why do SEO myths spread generally? Because our industry is fairly big on mistruths. We have had a reputation in the past, unfortunately. The whole snake oil salesperson, etc. We're trying to lose that, but obviously when AI SEO comes along, we go back 10 steps with this. Part of the reason is obviously rapid evolution. We're in a really fast moving learning curve at the moment with AI SEO. Lots and lots of guesswork going on, more so than normal. SEO is not there's not that many definitive answers. It's not like PPC. You can just switch it on and switch it off, and you bid X and you get Y. It's the words "it depends" is kind of our industry catchphrase. So we also have, if you ever go on LinkedIn or any other social media channel where there's quite a big SEO community, you'll end up with these echo chambers. You'll end up with almost like sycophantic groups where you end up with tribes like of this opinion and that opinion. There's one at the minute, there's the whole like, is it geo? Is it SEO? Is it AEO? Is it, you'll end up with kind of herd behavior. Patents is another big one in SEO. Everybody waves a patent around and says, hey, look at this Google patent. They don't necessarily realize that patents are not always in production. And we know from the C-suite in our industry, unfortunately, there is a desire for simple levers. Like, what's going to happen? What's going to make this work tomorrow? SEO is not like that, but it doesn't stop people from pushing for quick change. And then obviously, one of the biggest ones at the minute is ambiguous terminology. Newer terms appearing in our industry that really people don't fully understand. The first one is the myth of chunking. Now, chunking has several meanings. You're going to hear a lot about chunking over the years now in the SEO world because it's largely to do with the way that large language models are different to the way that search engines deal with what they call information retrieval in normal text. But chunking in itself as a terminology has different meanings depending on which particular background of computer science you're looking at it from. There's this notion of chunking in information theory and choice theory. And there's this famous paper by George Miller that was based on the magic number 7. Basically, his concept was, if you break things, anything over 7, anything where the short-term memory has to try and count over 7 or consume over 7 pieces of information together, you just end up being not being able to remember it. So that's one big area. And there's this theory of magic number 7 plus or minus 2. Yeah. So to some extent, things like navigational number of items on a navigation, there is, in the world of information architecture, there's the George Miller impact has an influence on that of old, about, making sure people don't have too much choice and so forth. And then there's chunking is used in education in what they call the segmenting principle. So it's about like breaking pieces of education and learning up into small pieces. Unfortunately, the SEO world seems to have latched on to this chunking notion in SEO generally, and they're trying to apply it to normal search. But in actual fact, chunking relates to chopping up pieces of text for large language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, and so forth, because the way that AI works with search is it has what they call a context window. So it can only look at so many things at a time, because of the expense of it. And what some have started doing in the SEO world, and there's even some tools out there suggesting people do this, is they are breaking up the text on their page into really silly little, like, awful, like one sentence and then a space and then a sentence and then a space and then 5 words and then a space. Search engines do not want us to break up the text on the page so it's ridiculously difficult to read, or it looks stupid, or it looks unnatural, etc. Yeah. In fact, only just yesterday, or the day before it may have been, there was a Google Search Central event in Toronto, and one of the big things that Danny Sullivan from Google said is, hey, Google doesn't want you to chunk your content up into tiny pieces. Yeah. Don't do it. Because what's happening is search engines are trying to learn how to integrate chunking, if you like, the LLM world in with the normal search world. So they're trying to teach their system to understand what natural looks like. Yeah. All of a sudden, if you've cut your content up into these tiny chunks, which are really difficult for humans to consume, and search engines suddenly start to get better at understanding what humans want, your content stands out like an old keyword stuffed page. So we don't need to do these things. So as I said, chunking is used in machine learning because of the token limits on language models. It's to make sure that there's no loss of information, and it enables what they call vector search. And there's also this notion of retrieval augmented generation, which is where large language models need to utilize external knowledge, like for instance from search or another knowledge base, to help them fully understand gaps in data that they've trained on the likes of, Wikipedia in the past, because they train language models in what they call a closed model. So it has a cutoff time, they train it, it's never good enough. So they have to take extra learning from current search using this method of retrieval augmented generation. So chunking is used there as well. So it supports knowledge retrieval rather than ranking. It's nothing to do with ranking, and I think that's part of the problem. And also, there's many different types of machine learned chunking as well. So how do we know which one Google is using? If we try and game the system, well, we just don't. So we shouldn't bother. So it's misunderstood. The narrative seems fairly simple. I hope it seems simple. I've got quite a few confused faces looking at me. Yeah, you're going to hear a lot about chunking. Don't go there. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Yeah. You even see tools. This is actually one of our most respected tools in the industry, saying this is what chunking looks like versus what unchunked looks like. That's not chunked content on that page. That is semantically organized content, well structured, probably utilizing a classic system such as the inverted pyramid of journalism. So that is just well organized content on the left. It's not chunked. It's not cut into little tiny pieces. So don't confuse semantic structuring, which you should use for chunking, yeah. And like I said, otherwise, Wikipedia has been chunking for decades because Wikipedia does a great job of structuring content. You should organize your content like Wikipedia in that regard. Reference materials anyway, yeah. Also, Google says, don't chunk your content. And they said it again yesterday. They keep saying it, yeah. So don't go there. I think I've said enough on that. Natural. Keep everything natural. Don't forget, the search engines are trying to emulate humans. They don't want you to like don't write for machines. I know where people, you're even hearing people nowadays say, we're writing for machines again. No, you're not. If you are, you're writing for machines that are trying to emulate humans, yeah? So always think of the humans. So clear, readable, user-first content, strong topical authority, and very strong internal linking to like send strong signals of what content is. Make sure you're satisfying user intent increasingly. Technical performance, that's not going away anytime soon. All the foundations of good technical SEO matter as much as they always did. And good structured data, accessibility, and crawlability. But you were probably doing that already. But this is the point. You know, with AI SEO it's not any different. It's just a nuanced evolution as we move forward. Yeah, it is going to be hybrid. I'm going to come to that later. But so there are differences, but it's the foundations of good SEO will get you 99% of the way there. Next one. Some of you may not have heard of this. Some of you may have. Most of you will have heard of robots.txt, which we use on a website to say to search engine crawlers, either go here or don't go here, and so on and so forth. You're allowed, you're not. Somebody came up with an idea for large language model bots called LLMS.TXT. Literally, supposedly to be like robots.txt, but for large language model crawlers. It's a funny one, this one, because in principle, it kind of sounds like a good idea, but in reality, you know, you don't just throw out a new internet protocol and expect the internet to like accept it for a start. Things like robots.txt, they are commissioned and accepted by what they call the Internet Engineering Task Force over many years, many debates, W3C Foundation and so on and so forth, professors and so forth are all behind deciding whether something gets accepted as a web protocol. So you don't just throw out an LLMs.txt idea and say, hey, let's all accept this. This is what it looks like. This is, somebody proposed it. It did get some traction. People started putting what they call the LLMs.txt file in their website, say, hey, come and crawl my site, all you AI crawlers. It's supposed to, if you like, provide, it's supposed to provide the clues for the best parts of a website to AI bot crawlers. So it's not everything. It's not like saying crawl this part but don't crawl this part. It's almost like signposting to just the best parts. So effectively minimizing what LLM bots would have. But there's lots of confusion over its purpose, and it's certainly not for crawling or LLM controlling. Mark Williams-Cook, who some of you might know, based in Norwich, he was like, well, if somebody's going to have an LLMs.txt, I'm going to create a cats.txt. See if I can get a standard for that going, yeah. And actually, his is doing as well as LLMs.txt. But I vote for pommies.txt, yeah. Somebody created this and I was like, I'm having that. But the thing is, I'm biased because this is my Pomeranian Bert's, yeah. So I'm biased. The point is, the world has gone nuts in the SEO world, yeah. We're kind of jumping on all sorts. And actually, Chris Green, who's a really super technical guy, brilliant, he said, right, I'm gonna see whether AI bots actually crawl this LLMs.txt, whether they're actually picking up on this. And he used it as across millions of websites as an example, yeah. And he found that actually no LLM bots are crawling the LLMs.txt, so they're not interested. And Google has said no AI system is interested in this either. So it might seem like something that's easy, an easy win. Add this to your website. It's probably not worth bothering with. And Google just keeps saying, don't bother. But then Google's own developers added it to their websites. Yeah. Oh, I know. Seriously, literally. Like Google's John Mueller was like, no, nobody should bother with LLMs.txt on a website. And then next thing you know, I believe it was Crystal Carter from Wix said, hey, we just spotted that all the Google developer websites have added these LLMs.TXT, and you said not to do it. Anyway, lo and behold, the next day they all disappeared. So I think also there is some like truth that Google apparently don't give any SEO advice to any of their own internal team. They're not allowed, yeah. They don't even speak to them. So maybe they just also got caught up in the SEO hype and thought that's what you're supposed to do. But at the same time, as I said, they removed it. It went. But then at the same time, there is another argument for this LLMs.TXT because we're entering this other world now, this world of agentic search, which is where you won't just have like ChatGPT and so forth. You'll have agents that, you know, on a website, you'll just use ChatGPT, and the agent that you use in it will say, right, do you want me to go and book you some tickets to a concert? What kind of seats do you want? You know, you want a restaurant table? What kind of cuisine do you want? And it just goes off and it does all sorts, yeah. That is the future that Google is talking about as having going forward, yeah. So I think from what I can gather, potentially this LLMs.TXT could be being used eventually in some kind of form to control agentic search using structured data. So this is a really smart guy, Andrea Volpini. If you've not come across him, he's really into semantic search, super clever. He does loads and loads of stuff around this really like deep learning agentic stuff as well. And he had a really good thought. The LLMs.TXT isn't for discovery, it's for agents. Yeah. So anyway, again, it's all, the jury's out on a lot of this. This is what he suggested. He suggested that Google's doing all sorts in that field. Yeah. It's kind of just starting to emerge now. But also there's other stuff in this agentic world as well, and this is something that's big. There's this notion of universal commerce protocol, and Shopify have also done something called with OpenAI called Agentic Commerce Protocol. And this is the whole agent thing. This is where eventually you'll be able to just go to ChatGPT and check out instead of going to a website. This is a collaboration between Google, Shopify, loads of other like tech companies, LLM tech companies as well. So there's a lot going on that potentially the likes of LLMs.TXT impacts more on the agentic side of things. But as I say, a lot of it is driven by the likes of AI fear and blog exaggeration. There's a lot of blogs out there that are kind of making claims, and there's confusion. Next one, information gain. Quite a lot of you hopefully will have heard of information gain. Has anybody not? Has anybody heard of information gain? Yeah, good, yeah. Information gain. I know you have, Natalie. Yeah, Tim, you have, yeah. Anyway, it all centers around this patent, one patent. Somebody jumped on it. It basically says, if you've got more information than the competitor, we're going to rank you higher. That's the bottom line to it, really. But it is just one patent. It's quite old, yeah. But this is the point. It's like, if you look at terminology in one industry or one sector of computer science, it can have a completely different meaning. In reality, information gain in the machine learning world means nothing like that patent. But actually, what's happening in the content marketing world, a lot of people are using it to peddle this notion of, you know, add more value, which makes perfect sense, yeah. So, as I say as well, patents, just because they've been, you know, written, it doesn't necessarily mean they've been deployed. Bottom line is, it just looks like it's got this, it's similar to what we would call skyscraper SEO. See what your competitors are doing, do something better, add a bit more value. But again, you were probably already doing that, weren't you? Yeah. Who doesn't go and look at what competitors are doing and say, we're going to do something better than that? And in actual fact, information gain is much bigger than just that one patent. It's actually based on this paper called A Mathematical Theory of Communications by Claude Shannon. The last time I checked, it had like 50,000 citations over the years. It's really old. And it's huge in the world of machine learning and AI search and so forth. So based on decision tree theory, classification. So Basically, it's used to predict how pure a split is in data. Yeah. So classification theory in machine learning, basically, it's used all the time in search engines. And for instance, in spam, say you have an email in Gmail, it's used as a classifier. Is that spam? Does it look like spam? And so forth. So classification modeling is just very widespread, but information gain is a big part of that. And it does what they call quantification of reduction in entropy, uncertainty. Yeah. So possibly information gain is used in the likes of crawling, knowing should we continue crawling down this path? Where does the value end? And so forth. How similar are these two pages? Possibly in the likes of duplication of content. It decides where's the purity and so forth. And actually, its founder, Claude Shannon, who wrote that mathematical theory paper, Claude, the LLM was named after him. So it's that big, yeah. But it's not what SEOs are saying it is. So as I say, it's around purity in classification. Yeah, I just wanted to give you an example of a really, really inaccurate nano banana picture there. If you look closely, you'll see it's all a bit mad, that decision tree. Okay, yeah. So why could information gain be misread? Again, worshipping of patents. We all presume that they're in production, but they're not. Desire for measurable factors. A lot of the time, patents are published just to protect things. They're done as defensive measures to actually stop somebody else creating something that you think they might make. And the majority of papers never ship. Yeah. Another one, SEO, AI myths. AI content is automatically penalized. AI content is automatically low quality. This is not true. Yeah. However, having said that, if you do scale AI content and just churn out a load of like copy and paste stuff from ChatGPT and just throw it out there, there's this thing that's emerging called Mount AI that looks like you're going to do really, really well for about a few months, and then it just falls off a cliff. Yeah. I think it's the period of time it takes for Google to realize what's going on. Yeah. And then, because that's going to take them coming back a few times to build a picture. So yeah, there is that, but that's not because it's AI, it's because you're doing it at scale. You're not thinking about quality and so forth. So, and there's actually quite a few studies that actually do show that if you use AI well for ideation and so forth, you can do really good with it. And also Google have said it won't cause a penalty. It's not the AI that causes the penalty. And also there's this notion AI content is all automatically low quality. That's not true. It's what you do with it. In actual fact, automation in AI has been used for many, many years already. Sports scores, predictions. You go onto a travel site, they have a really good summarization of what people have said about this location or so on and so forth. So you can do really good stuff with it, but it's how you utilize it. And also, as we know, every e-commerce site going is automated content. It always has been for years because they're dynamically driven templates. Okay, so as I say, another one, the new era, AI takes over SEO. I think we're starting to realize that that's not the case. We're starting to be able to live alongside AI. It's a really steep learning curve. Tom Capper did a talk, Tom Capper's from Moz, and did a talk about did we pass peak AIO? In other words, AI overviews, have we gone past the peak of them appearing? Since I built this deck, it turns out we haven't. There's more of them. So there's actually more AI overviews now at the top. So I think we're kind of having to learn to live with it, I would say. And of course, the classic AI SEO is dead again. No, it's not. Here we are. But it definitely is in a hybrid state. We can't even agree on our own name. I think I've seen Natalie in a few rows on LinkedIn about that. Yeah. EIEIO, AIO, GEO, SEO, ASO, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But definitely the learning curve is very steep. We've got a lot to learn as we go along. But you should always just revert back to the key things. Be helpful in your content. Originality is very, very important, massively so. Again, just yesterday, Google talked about something called commodity content versus non-commodity content yesterday in Toronto. Commodity content is stuff that anybody could create, like 10 tips for this, 5 tips for that. You know, like stuff that a scraper or an AI could just churn out. The real value is in the stuff that uses your own data, surveys, human experience, interviews, etc. Things that a GPT cannot necessarily just chuck out. Entity clarity, making sure you're consistent in your messaging, everywhere you're found on the internet, make sure you're consistent, yeah. And crawl efficiency is very important still. And freshness of content. Fabrice Canal from Bing is always talking about how actually you've got to keep revisiting that content you've got and just bringing it up to speed, bringing it up to date. Apparently, there is a 60% more chance that you're going to get cited in either Google's AI overviews or one of the LLMs like ChatGPT or Perplexity with content that's new versus old content. Yeah. Okay, I've just covered that. Yeah. And as I said, things like the old basics, back to basics with sitemaps, because it's around discoverability. So finally, search is complex. I hope I haven't confused you even more. Critical thinking is increasingly important, and disambiguation of terminology is critical. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.